All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children. Men will die for their wives and children. And God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. And the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus est. No safe space. Truths that terrify weak men. Written by Conrad Riker. Available now. Links in description. No safe space. A field guide for men who still notice reality. I need you to stay alive today. That is not drama. It is doctrine. No permanent decisions in acute shock. No revenge, no bottle, no rage text that your adversary will screenshot and hand to a judge who already sees you as a ledger entry with a temper. Call one trusted man, someone who has walked through this fire and rebuilt, and let him hold the rope while your hands are shaking. What has happened to you is ancient. Job lost his house, his children, his name, and his future in a single sequence, and his friends showed up not to help, but to explain why he deserved it. You have been expelled from the old life, home, routine, identity, the story you told yourself about what your sacrifice was building, and you are lying in ashes where that story burned. The system that processed you does not see a father, a craftsman, a man who carried weight for decades. It sees a utility to be divided and a liability to be managed. That reduction is a crime against truth, and naming it honestly is the first clean act of your rebuilding, but you are not dead. You are in the blackening, the alchemical nigredo, where panic, rage, grief, and betrayal flood every room, and the old fantasies about love, justice, and institutional good faith dissolve into the dark. This stage feels like annihilation because everything false in you is dying at once, and everything true has not yet emerged. Do not run from it and do not drown in it. Walk, eat, sleep, pray. Write the timeline in cold ink. Obey lawful boundaries while challenging them through vetted counsel, and let the fire burn off what was never yours without burning the house down around it. The black fog will lift. The morning will come when you look at the ruins and see not a graveyard, but a foundation cleared, scorched, honest, ready for real masonry. Your task now is to survive the crossing with your soul intact so that you return as the man this civilizational collapse actually needs. Disciplined, truthful, fatherly, impossible to manipulate, building again on the bedrock of logos rather than the shifting sand of comfort and lies. The old life was heavier than you knew. What is coming can be cleaner, freer, and more yours than anything you have yet lived. First rule, stay alive and stay disciplined. Do not make permanent decisions inside acute shock. Do not retaliate. Do not intoxicate yourself into collapse. Tell one trusted man the truth today. If you are in immediate danger or might hurt yourself, secure immediate physical safety through the least adversarial trusted route available. The descent pattern, case pattern. The prediciting descent job wound, the man loses home, name, children, work rhythm, and future image in a job-like sequence that tests whether his faith is only comfort or also truth. Private trust collapses into public accusation. Children and home become procedural leverage. Friends and professionals are triangulated into a one-sided narrative. Money, work, sleep, reputation, and fatherhood are compressed at once natural law crime ledger. False allegation as anti-truth. Truth into leverage 9/10. Restoration, evidence, chronology, witness, due process. Legal kidnapping as anti-fatherhood. Family into casework 10/10. Restoration, lawful fatherhood, records, patience, counsel. Process punishment as anti-justice. Law into coercive therapy, 8/10. Restoration, proportion, appeal, written discipline, the alchemical map. Expulsion, the first shock of being driven out of the old house, old story, and old identity ashes, the humiliating ground zero, where fantasy burns away and the man sees what remains, nigredo blackening. The dark night where panic, rage, grief, and betrayal are named without obeying them, albedo whitening. The cleansing stage of sobriety, records, lawful discipline, prayer, and clean daily order, citrinitas yellowing. The first return of dawn, discernment, brotherhood, and meaning. After the black fog lifts rubido reddening, the return of warm blood, courage, fatherhood, vocation, and love, disciplined by truth crossing the great water. The decisive passage from collapse into a new country of reality-tested manhood, finding the wellspring, the discovery that life does not come from approval, litigation, or fantasy projection, bricking the well. The slow masonry of routine, virtue, work, sleep, prayer, walking, and brotherhood, lowering the jug with rope and wheel, the patient mechanism of repeated practice that draws meaning back from depth, returning as servant king.
The post-traumatic return as father, brother, witness, builder, and disciplined man, Dr. Winona demonstrates the betrayal logic. Except from Unsafe to Unbind, a field memoir of liberation, by Dr. Winona, feminist, Marxist, PhD, Chapter 6. The work of protecting my truth. I want to be clear about something before I begin. This chapter is not revenge. I have moved well beyond the need for that. This is testimony.
Testimony is different. Testimony is what women owe each other and what the historical record demands. If my account happens to align with procedural advantages available to me through family court, that is not strategizing. That is simply the universe confirming what I already knew to be true. On reading the room correctly, I remember the evening I understood what was happening. Not the specifics. The specifics had been accumulating for years like carbon monoxide. I mean the pattern. He would come home and there would be this tightness. Not anger, exactly. Something colder, a withdrawal. He would sit at the kitchen island and scroll his phone while the children orbit tugged at his elbows. And when I asked him about the property tax deadline or the sump pump or the HVAC quote I'd already researched and tabbed, he would say, "I'll handle it," in the voice men use when they mean, "Stop managing me, even though you must. Because you always have, because you are the only adult tracking any of this, and the tracking itself is the wound you inflict, and the wound is your fault, not the failure that caused it." My therapist, Dr. Levinson, who is excellent, said something that unlocked everything.
She said, "Winona, what you're describing isn't a communication problem. It's a safety problem." And I thought, yes, that is exactly what it is.
I have been unsafely managing a man's inadequacy for 14 years, and the managing has been reframed as controlling, and the controlling has been reframed as the reason he withdraws. And his withdrawal has been reframed as my failure to be soft enough, warm enough, grateful enough, when the entire time the original material fact was that he was not doing the work of partnership, and I was. And the work was invisible, and the invisibility was the architecture of the entire relationship. So I began documenting. On documenting, I want to be precise about what documenting means, because I know how this sounds. Documenting is not building a case. Building a case implies adversarial intent. Documenting is protecting your reality. When you have spent 14 years in a relationship where your perception is continually corrected, where you say, "I feel alone in this marriage," and he says, "That's absurd, I'm right here, what more do you want?" You need a record. You need a paper trail that confirms you are not insane. This is not paranoia. This is what every clinician, every advocate, every woman who has ever attended a support circle will tell you. Write it down, because you will need to remember what happened, and he will remember it differently. I kept a small notebook. Later, I kept a secure app. I recorded the date, the incident, my emotional response, and any safety implication. I was thorough. I was calm. I was not gathering ammunition. I was gathering evidence of my own sanity. If certain entries, for instance, The entry about the evening he blocked the bedroom doorway during an argument about the school district transfer, or the entry about the way he threw his car keys onto the counter so hard they left a mark on the granite, which I photographed. If those entries later proved useful to my attorney in establishing a pattern of intimidating behavior, that is because the pattern was real. The documentation did not create the pattern. It revealed it. There is a difference, and the difference matters, and anyone who conflates the two is participating in the very gaslighting I'm describing. On community care, people ask me why I told so many people. Friends, neighbors, his sister, the school counselor, our pediatrician, my department chair, they frame it as gossip or escalation. They do not understand what community means to a woman in crisis. When you begin to see clearly when the fog lifts and you realize the man sleeping beside you has been managing your perception of him for over a decade, you cannot hold that alone. You must not hold that alone. Isolation is how women die, not always physically, often spiritually. Often the death is slow and quiet and looks like a woman who has stopped speaking at dinner, and everyone assumes she is fine, and she is not fine, she is gone. And no one noticed because she had the decency to vanish politely. So I spoke to my circle. I spoke to people in positions of institutional care, therapists, educators, medical professionals, because that is what those positions are for. If what I shared influenced how people saw him, that is not smearing. That is truth having natural consequences. I did not control their interpretation. I provided my experience. What they did with it was their own moral discernment. His sister stopped speaking to him. His oldest friend pulled back. His department chair suggested he take a semester of leave. I did not orchestrate any of this. I was honest, and honesty has a half-life that eventually reaches everyone in its radius. If his relationships could not survive the truth of my testimony, that tells you something about the relationships, not about the testimony. On the children, this is the part I will not apologize for. The children needed stability. Stability is not a buzzword. Stability is the material, logistical, emotional infrastructure that allows a child to eat, sleep, attend school, see a therapist, maintain friendships, and not witness a parent who is disintegrating. I was the architect of that infrastructure. I had always been the architect. Removing me from the home would have been catastrophic. Removing him was triage. My attorney, who is sharp and who I recommend without reservation, explained that family court operates on a principle, the best interest of the child. She asked me to articulate in writing why remaining in the home with me in the school district I had selected, near the community networks I had built, served the children's best interest. I articulated it beautifully, not because I'm a gifted writer, though I am, but because it was true. Every word was true. The children's routines were anchored to me, their emotional regulation was anchored to me. Their homework, their pediatrician, their friendships, their soccer carpools anchored to me. The home was the physical container of that anchoring. To remove the children from the home would be to traumatize them for his convenience. I was not willing to permit that. Did the home happen to be the marital residence? Yes. Did the mortgage happen to be jointly held? Yes. Did he happen to have lived in it for 11 years and built the deck with his own hands and planted the Japanese maple whose fall color the children photographed every October? Yes. But none of those facts override the operative principle, best interest of the child. The deck does not override the child. The tree does not override the child. His attachment to the home does not override the children's need for the primary attachment figure to remain geographically stable. If he experienced this as losing his home, I understand that. I have compassion for that. But compassion does not require self-immolation. I did not set the house on fire. I asked the court to recognize reality. The court recognized reality. That is not theft. That is jurisprudence functioning as designed. On the restraining order, I want to address this directly because it has been wildly mischaracterized. The evening of the school district argument, the one I mentioned earlier, he did not hit me. I have never claimed he hit me. What I claimed in the affidavit was that I feared for my safety. These are different statements, and both can be true simultaneously, and the conflation of the two is itself a form of the intimidation I am describing. He raised his voice. He stood up from the table. He walked toward me in a way that was, I have the exact word from Dr. Levinson, foreboding. I moved toward the bedroom. He moved to the doorway. He did not touch me, but he stood in the doorway, and the doorway is a narrow space, and his body is a large body, and the children were in the next room, and I said, "Please move." And he said, "We are not done talking about this," and I felt in my body, which is where trauma lives, which is where the neuroscience confirms trauma is stored. I felt that I could not leave. That is an event. That is a documentable event, and the legal standard for a protective order does not require bruising. It requires reasonable fear of harm. My fear was reasonable. Dr. Levinson confirmed it was reasonable. The judge confirmed it was reasonable. 3 independent parties evaluated my experience and found it legally credible. I'm aware that the order required him to vacate the home. I am aware that it restricted his contact with the children to supervised visits. I am aware that this was devastating to him. I am aware that he sat in his truck in the driveway for 40 minutes after being served, and that the neighbors saw him crying. But I did not make him stand in that doorway. He made that choice. Choices have consequences. The legal system is a mechanism for delivering those consequences. I activated the mechanism because my safety required it. If his tears were genuine, and I believe they were, then perhaps the tears are the beginning of accountability, which is a word men are not taught but are expected to learn. On the financial arrangement, I have a PhD. I am a full professor. I earn a salary that in any just society would be sufficient for a family. It is not sufficient because the structural economics of this country penalize caregiving and reward extraction. And my salary reflects decades of institutional devaluation of women's intellectual labor. He earns more. He has always earned more. His earning capacity was built during a marriage in which I provided the domestic infrastructure that permitted him to work 60-hour weeks, accept the promotion that required travel, and accumulate the retirement account that is legally and morally partially mine. My attorney requested temporary spousal support, child support proportional to the children's established standard of living, and a division of assets that reflected my non-monetary contribution to the marital estate. This is not taking his money. This is returning my own money in the only currency the law recognizes. If he experiences the monthly transfer as theft, I would invite him to calculate the market rate for 14 years of unpaid domestic labor, emotional management, child-rearing, household logistics, schedule architecture, and the invisible social reproduction work that Marx identified and that family courts are only beginning to acknowledge. He has been subsidized. The subsidy is ending. The ending feels like theft only to the man who never knew he was receiving a subsidy in the first place. On being called vindictive, my ex-husband's current partner, a woman 10 years younger, which I will allow to speak for itself, has apparently described me as vindictive. My colleagues in gender studies have asked how I respond to this. I respond with scholarship. Vindictiveness requires disproportion. Vindictiveness requires that the response exceed the injury. My response, documentation, testimony, protective orders, asset division, custody arrangements, community disclosure was proportionate. Each element corresponded to a real injury. Each was mediated by an institution, the court, the clinic, the university, designed to evaluate credibility and assign remedy. If the cumulative effect felt disproportionate to him, that is because he had never been held accountable before. Accountability, when you have never experienced it, always feels like persecution. This is not my problem to solve. My problem to solve was my safety, my children's stability, and my freedom. I solved all 3, legally, ethically, permanently. On what I want other women to know, everything I did within the system. I used the courts, I used the clinics, I used the schools, I used the community. I used the language the system provided: safety, pattern, best interest, reasonable fear, non-monetary contribution, and I used it precisely because precision is what women have been denied, and precision is what the system requires. The system is not your enemy. The system is a tool. The question is whether you have been taught to use it. I am teaching you to use it. Dr. Feminist Marxist is professor of gender studies and author of The Vow as Violence. Toward a Materialist Critique of Covenantal Marriage, Oxford, 2019. She lives in the home where she raised her children. Spiritual divorce and the trip through hell. No safe space. Truths that terrify weak men. The spiritual divorce, a man's map through the fire. I, the first hour, the rule that saves the man. You are reading this because something broke. Maybe it was tonight. Maybe it was 3 weeks ago and you have not slept properly since. Maybe the paperwork arrived. Maybe the sheriff served you at work. Maybe she walked out and took the children and the house and the future image you carried like a spine, and now you are standing in a kitchen that is suddenly just a room, looking at a coffee mug that belongs to a man who no longer exists, wondering whether to keep breathing. Stay alive today. That is your only assignment, not because this is sentimental, because your adrenal system is flooded with cortisol, your prefrontal cortex is offline, your heart rate is elevated, your judgment is impaired, and every primitive circuit in your body is screaming at you to do something permanent. Send the text, make the call, drive to the house, write the email, swallow the pills, accelerate the car. Your body believes it is being hunted. It is not wrong, but the predator right now is your own neurochemistry weaponized by shock. And the last thing a hunted man should do is make irreversible decisions while his vision is narrowed to a tunnel. The first hour rule: no permanent decisions in acute shock. This is not therapy language, this is triage. This is the same discipline a field medic applies. Stop the bleeding, secure the airway, prevent the casualty from standing up and running on a broken leg. You are the casualty and the medic both, which is why you need another man. Contact one trusted man, not a committee, not a comment section. One man, sober, loyal, calm, experienced, preferably someone who has walked this passage and survived, not someone who will fuel your rage, not someone who will tell you what you want to hear, a man who will say, sit down. Drink water. Do not text her. Do not post anything. Do not drink. Hand me your phone if you have to. We will deal with this tomorrow, sober, with a plan. If you are in immediate danger to your own life, if the void is pulling at you with physical force, you secure immediate physical safety through the least adversarial route available. A trusted man, emergency medical help. Local emergency services if no safer alternative exists. You do not have to explain everything. You say, I am in crisis. I need to not be alone right now. What you must not do and why, no revenge. Not because the adversary deserves mercy, because revenge in acute shock is tactically illiterate. It creates evidence. It converts your pain into her paperwork. Every rage text, every confrontational voicemail, every door slamming scene becomes an exhibit. You would be handing a weapon to the party already positioned to use it. The system is not neutral. The system is waiting for you to provide the rope. Do not give it rope. No intoxication. Alcohol and shock are a combination that produces catastrophically bad decisions, volatile communication, and critically a paper trail of drunken messages or behavior that will be used to characterize you permanently. A man in acute divorce shock who drinks is doing the adversary's work for free. No social media, nothing, not a cryptic post, not a she'll know what she did hint, not a defense, not an explanation. Silence is not weakness. Silence is operational security. You are in a theater where everything you say will be parsed, screenshotted, decontextualized, and weaponized. Say nothing publicly, full stop. No permanent decisions about assets, custody, employment, or living arrangements until the cortisol clears and you have competent, vetted, due process-oriented, fatherhood-literate legal counsel. Preferably an attorney who has personally survived family court abuse and rebuilt. Not a mediator who wants to rush you into a fair settlement. Not a generalist who handles real estate and the occasional divorce. A specialist in the specific arena you are entering, one who understands that family law is a female-coded, gamma-biased arena stacked against men, and who will strategize to minimize your exposure, paperwork, escalation, cost, and opportunities for process abuse. Write the timeline tonight, or as soon as you are sober and safe, begin a written chronology, date, time, location, what happened, who was present, what was said. This is not a diary. This is an evidentiary record. You will need it. Memory degrades under stress, and the adversary's narrative is already being constructed by professionals, by allies, by institutions that have a template for this story. Your timeline is your counter-narrative, built from facts, not feelings. Walk, work, pray, sleep, eat. These are not self-care platitudes. These are survival operations. Walking regulates the nervous system. Prayer or meditation or silence or whatever your tradition calls communion with the permanent recenters you in something larger than the immediate catastrophe. Sleep is non-negotiable. Sleep deprivation produces paranoid, impulsive, catastrophizing cognition identical to mental illness. Food is fuel. Shock burns through glucose like a furnace. Eat whether you are hungry or not. Do all of this within the law. Obey standing court orders, even unjust ones, while challenging them lawfully through counsel. An order you disagree with is still an order. Violating it gives the system cause to characterize you as dangerous, non-compliant, unstable, the exact profile the adversary needs to justify her narrative. Compliance is not submission. Compliance is strategic patience while you build your case within the system's own rules. 2. The betrayal sequence, naming the machine. A man in family court shock did not arrive there randomly. He arrived through a sequence, a pattern so consistent across cases that it functions almost like a protocol, whether any single participant consciously designed it or not. Institutions and incentives design it. The participants merely execute. Here is the sequence. Learn it, name it, recognize that what happened to you was not unique personal failure, but a recognizable, patterned institutional process. Stage 1. Private trust collapses into public accusation. What was once a marriage, a private covenant of mutual obligation, sacrifice, and shared life, is converted into a public case. The adversary or her counsel or the therapeutic industrial complex advising her reframes private marital dissatisfaction as public danger. The vocabulary shifts from we to I, from our problems to his behavior, from conflict to abuse, from disagreement to safety concern. Notice the grammar. The entire apparatus rewards this translation. Safety is the master key that unlocks every door in family court. Fear is the currency that buys ex parte orders, temporary custody, exclusive possession of the home, and the procedural high ground. The accusation does not need to be proven at this stage. It needs only to be made in the right language to the right official at the right time. The man discovers, often for the first time, that his marriage was never a private covenant. It was always legally a state-regulated contract enforceable by state power, and the state's default assumptions about men, fathers, safety, and danger have already been set by decades of institutional advocacy he never noticed because he was working. Stage 2. Children and home become procedural leverage. The children are not removed because they are in danger. The children are removed because their presence in the home and his absence from it constitute the most powerful leverage available in the negotiation that follows. The home itself, the mortgage, the equity, the physical structure of daily life becomes a chip. A man who has been removed from his home and separated from his children will agree to almost anything to restore access. This is not weakness. This is the predictable human response to the removal of the most fundamental bonds. The system knows this. The system depends on this. The system is engineered to produce exactly this desperation and then to extract concessions from it. Stage 3. Friends and professionals are triangulated into a one-sided narrative. By the time the man knows what is happening, the story has already been told. To friends, to family, to the children's school, to therapists, to pediatricians, to attorneys, to the court. A coherent narrative has been constructed in which the adversary is the long-suffering victim, and the man is the source of all dysfunction. Each listener receives the story without the man's counter-account, because the man is still reeling, still in shock, still believing that truth will naturally prevail if he just explains. It will not naturally prevail. Truth requires advocacy. Narrative requires counter-narrative. Silence in the face of a sustained, institutionally supported accusation is not dignity, it is procedural surrender. Stage 4. Money, work, sleep, reputation, and fatherhood are compressed at once. This is the kill shot of the sequence, not one front. All fronts simultaneously. Legal fees drain accounts, court appearances disrupt work. Sleep collapses under stress. Reputation corrodes as the narrative spreads. Fatherhood is reduced to scheduled visitation, supervised perhaps, if the accusations are severe enough, access to assets is frozen or restricted. The man faces a multi-front war with depleted resources, impaired judgment, compromised reputation, and no clear command structure. This compression is not accidental. It is the mechanism by which men are brought to heel. Faced with simultaneous loss on every front, most men will accept any settlement, sign any agreement, absorb any characterization just to stop the bleeding. The system counts on this.
The system is a bloodletting machine designed to produce exhaustion and capitulation. What the fictional Dr. Winona shows us, the excerpt from Dr. Winona, feminist Marxist, a fictional composite, but assembled from real rhetorical patterns, reveals the playbook with unusual candor. Read it not for facts, but for method.
Notice the moves. Documenting is not building a case, it is. The euphemism does not change the function. Keeping a small notebook of dates, emotional responses, and safety implications is casework. The linguistic reframe, I am protecting my reality, not strategizing, is itself a strategic move, designed to make preparation look like survival and adversarial planning look like self-care, safety as universal solvent. Every action is justified by safety. Blocking a doorway during an argument becomes a safety incident. Throwing keys onto a counter becomes a safety pattern. The word safety is doing all the work in these sentences, and it is doing that work because the institution rewards it. Safety is the thought-terminating cliché of family law. Once invoked, it shuts down inquiry, reverses presumption, and shifts the burden to the accused to prove a negative. Accountability, when you have never experienced it, always feels like persecution. This sentence is a Kafka trap. If the man protests the process, the protest is evidence that he needs the process. If he accepts it, the acceptance confirms the narrative. The structure allows no exit. This is not accountability. Accountability requires due process, evidence, cross-examination, proportionality, and the right to face the accuser. What is described is unilateral characterization dressed in the language of justice. The system is a tool.
Correct. The question is, a tool for whom? The fictional Dr. Winona answers, for the party who learns its language, deploys its categories, and exploits its default assumptions. She is not wrong about this.
She is distressingly accurate. The man's error was never ignorance of his wife's character. It was ignorance of the system his wife could activate against him. The response is not to learn the same tactics and deploy them. The response is to recognize the system for what it is, to name it, to survive it lawfully, and to build toward its replacement with institutions grounded in due process, evidence, and the equal moral dignity of fathers. 3. Job, the map of undeserved collapse. There is a text older than family court, older than the modern state, older than every institution that currently grinds you. It is the book of Job, and it is the most precise map ever drawn for the precise territory you now occupy. Job was a righteous man. The text insists on this. He did not bring his catastrophe on himself through moral failure. He did not deserve what happened, and what happened was total. He lost his wealth, all of it. In a single day, through a sequence of messengers, every economic asset was wiped out. He lost his children, all of them. A wind struck the house where they were gathered, and they were gone. He lost his health, boils from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. He scraped himself with potsherds while sitting in ashes. He lost his reputation and his social standing. His friends came, and then they theologized his suffering. They insisted he must have done something to deserve it. They became prosecutors, not comforters. They were certain the system, divine justice, in their framing, could not have produced this outcome unless the victim was guilty. He lost his future image. Everything he had imagined about the shape of his life, prosperity, legacy, family continuity, respect, was demolished. Sound familiar? The man in family court shock is Job. He did not deserve this, or if he did make mistakes, the punishment is wildly disproportionate to any fault, administered by a system that claims moral authority while operating on extraction and leverage. He has lost his home, his children, his wealth, his reputation, his sleep, his health, his social standing, and the image of the future that organized his daily labor. His friends, if they remain, will struggle to understand. Some will side with the adversary's narrative because it is simpler, because it is already constructed, because the institutions broadcasting it carry authority. They will become the comforters, explaining why this must somehow be his fault. Job's response is the map. He refused to curse reality. Job's wife told him to curse God and die. She meant, abandon your integrity, declare the universe unjust, and let the despair take you. Job refused. He said, shall we receive good at the hand of God, and shall we not receive evil? This is not passivity. This is the supreme act of metaphysical defiance. I will not pretend the universe is evil because something evil happened to me. I will not let the wound write the law. He refused to accept false guilt. The comforters insisted, confess whatever sin caused this. Job insisted, I have nothing to confess that justifies this. He maintained his integrity, not in arrogance, but in truth. He would not accept a narrative designed to make him manageable through manufactured shame. He demanded a hearing. Job did not merely endure, he demanded to be heard. He wanted to lay out his case before the ultimate tribunal. He wanted due process, not as a legal technicality, but as a metaphysical requirement. A man who has been unjustly stripped has the right to confront the powers that stripped him and demand an accounting. He was restored, but only after the passage through darkness. The restoration was not immediate. It came through the depths, and when it came, it did not erase what was lost. The new children did not replace the dead ones. The new wealth did not undo the suffering. But Job's life continued, and his integrity, the thing the entire ordeal was designed to destroy, remained intact. Your Job wound is this: you have lost home, name, children, work rhythm, and future image in a sequence that tests whether your faith is only comfort or also truth. If your faith was only comfort, the loss of comfort will destroy it. If your faith is also truth, the loss of comfort will refine it into something unbreakable. You will be tempted to curse reality, to declare that women are inherently evil, that the system is hopeless, that all marriage is a trap, that your children are lost, that your life is over. These are curses. They are the equivalents of Job's wife telling him to curse God and die. They feel like truth in the moment. They are despair wearing the mask of realism. You will be tempted to accept false guilt, to believe the narrative that says you must have been abusive, controlling, inadequate, or cold, because otherwise this would not be happening. The comforters, the therapists, the court evaluators, the mutual friends, the culture itself will reinforce this. Hold the line. Examine yourself honestly, as every man must own your actual faults. Real men do this. But do not absorb invented sins designed to make you compliant. IV the alchemy, stages of the passage. Alchemy is not chemistry. It is a symbolic technology for mapping transformation through destruction. The alchemists understood something modern psychology rediscovered at great cost, that the human soul does not transform through comfort, it transforms through controlled disintegration and reconstitution. The alchemical stages are not superstition. They are a phenomenology of what happens to a man when everything is taken from him, and what must happen next if he is to emerge as something forged rather than merely broken. Here are the stages. You are somewhere in them right now. Stage 1, expulsion. The first shock of being driven out of the old house, the old story, the old identity. The physical eviction, whether literal, through a protective order or exclusive possession order, or functional, through the collapse of the shared living arrangement, is the threshold. One day you lived in a home that meant something. The next day you stood outside it with a duffel bag and a court paper that called you a danger. The expulsion is not merely spatial, it is existential. You are expelled from the narrative of your own life. The story you told yourself, good man, loving father, faithful husband, provider, protector, is overwritten by a new story in which you are the antagonist. The expulsion is the moment you discover that the story was never yours to control. It was always subject to revision by powers you did not see coming. Do not fight the expulsion with force. Fight it with law, with patience, with the slow reclamation of the narrative through evidence and time. The expulsion feels like the end. It is the beginning. Stage 2, ashes. The humiliating ground zero where fantasy burns away and the man sees what remains. In ashes, you confront what you actually believed versus what you wanted to believe. You wanted to believe the marriage was sound. You wanted to believe the vows meant something legally and morally binding. You wanted to believe your sacrifices were seen and valued. You wanted to believe the system was fair. You wanted to believe that being a good man provided protection. The ashes show you the truth. Some of what you believed was real, some was fantasy. Some was a comforting story you told yourself while working 60-hour weeks to fund a life that was being prepared quietly for your removal from it. The ashes are not nihilism. The ashes are clarity. What remains after the fire is what was actually real. The fire burns delusion. What it cannot burn, your skills, your discipline, your integrity, your actual relationships with your children, your capacity to work and build your soul, that is what you carry forward. Stage 3, Nigredo, the blackening, the dark night where panic, rage, grief, and betrayal are named without obeying them. This is the most dangerous stage. Nigredo is the psychological and spiritual equivalent of being submerged in darkness. Sleep fails, appetite fails, concentration fails. The mind loops obsessively through the betrayal sequence, replaying moments, reconstructing conversations, searching for the turning point that could have been different. Rage comes in waves, not the clean anger of justice, but the scalding fury of a man who has been systematically disassembled by people and institutions he trusted. Grief comes too. Grief not only for the marriage, but for the future image. The children's birthdays you will not attend, the home you will not grow old in, the identity you will not carry, the trust you will never have again in the same form. Nigredo discipline, name these experiences. Do not obey them. Naming is not suppressing. Naming is mastery. You say, I feel rage. I acknowledge it. It is proportionate to what was done, but I will not act from it. You say, I feel grief. It is real. It will not kill me. I will carry it like a weight that makes me stronger, not like a hole that makes me nothing. Do not drink through Nigredo. Do not drug through it. Do not rage text through it. Do not post through it. Nigredo is the furnace. The metal either refines or melts. Your discipline. Sleep, walk, eat, pray, write the timeline, obey lawful orders, contact your one trusted man, engage competent counsel, is the bellows that controls the heat. This is where many men are lost. They drown in the blackening, they drink, they rage, they act out, they provide the evidence that confirms the adversary's narrative. They alienate the few allies they have left. They collapse into a pathology the system then points to as proof of its original judgment. You will not be one of those men. You will name the darkness without becoming it. Stage 4, albedo, the whitening. The cleansing stage of sobriety, records, lawful discipline, prayer, and clean daily order. Dawn comes. Not suddenly, albedo is gradual. It is the first morning you wake up, and the despair is not the first thing you feel. It is there, but underneath it there is something else, a flat, clear, cold determination. The fog is thinning. Albedo is built through structure. You establish a daily routine, wake at the same time, eat at the same times. Walk. Work. Even if the work is diminished or disrupted, you work at something because work is the primary masculine therapy. You pray or meditate or sit in silence not to feel better, but to maintain contact with the permanent. You maintain the timeline, you organize documents, you meet with counsel, you obey orders. You do not give the system any additional material. Albedo is the stage where the man begins to think strategically rather than reactively. He stops asking, why is this happening to me? And starts asking, what is the lawful, disciplined path through this? He stops being a victim of the sequence and becomes a participant in the response. This is the stage where brotherhood becomes critical. You need men. Not a movement, a few specific men who have been through this, who know the territory, who will not judge you, who will hold you accountable to discipline when the grief pulls and the rage pushes. Stage 5, citrinitas, the yellowing, the first return of dawn, discernment, brotherhood, and meaning after the black fog lifts. Something strange happens in citrinitas. You begin to see the betrayal not only as catastrophe, but as initiation. Not because it was deserved, it was not, but because it revealed truths that comfort had hidden. You understand things now that you could not have understood before. The nature of institutional incentives, the architecture of family law, the fragility of reputation, the depth of male disposability, the difference between covenant and contract, the difference between a woman who loves you and a system that processes you. This is not gratitude for evil. It is the extraction of meaning from injustice, which is the supreme human act, the act that separates the man who is broken from the man who is forged. Citrinitas is where humor returns. Dark humor, perhaps, but real humor, the capacity to see the absurdity of the system, the theatricality of the allegations, the gamma bias that frames female conduct as testimony and male conduct as threat. You can laugh again, not because the situation is funny, but because you have recovered enough perspective to see the machinery working. And the sight of machinery, even malevolent machinery, is less terrifying than the sight of chaos. Stage 6. Rubedo, the reddening. The return of warm blood, courage, fatherhood, vocation, and love, disciplined by truth. Rubedo is the stage where the man comes back to life, not as the man he was before, but as the man the passage was designed to produce. The old man was trusting, perhaps naively. The new man is discerning. The old man defined himself through the marriage. The new man defines himself through his mission, his children, his work, his virtue, his brotherhood, and his relationship with the permanent. Rubedo is where love becomes possible again, but only in a form tested by reality. Not the projection of salvation onto a woman, not the fantasy that the right partner will complete you. Real love, disciplined, clear-eyed, bounded by virtue, ordered by truth, capable of giving without self-destruction and receiving without subservience. Fatherhood returns in Rubedo not as the daily physical presence that was stolen, but as an enduring spiritual and moral reality that no court order can extinguish. You father through whatever access you have, through the record you build, through the example you set, through the patience you maintain, through the dignity you refuse to surrender. You father through the long game. Stage 7. Crossing the Great Water. The decisive passage from collapse into a new country of reality-tested manhood. In the Yi Jing, crossing the Great Water is the image for a major transition that cannot be made half-heartedly. You commit. You leave the old shore behind, not by denying what happened, but by refusing to live in its ruins forever. The crossing is a decision. It is the moment when the man says, "I will not be defined by what was done to me. I will be defined by what I build after it." This is not denial. The wound remains. The scar is permanent. But the scar becomes part of a larger body, a body that works, builds, fathers, mentors, leads, and testifies. Stage 8. Finding the wellspring. The discovery that life does not come from approval, litigation, or fantasy projection. After the crossing, the man discovers something that sounds like a platitude, but is actually a metaphysical balm. The source of life is interior, not dependent on the adversary's approval, not dependent on the court's vindication, not dependent on a new woman arriving to rescue him, not dependent on public reputation or social media validation or institutional recognition. The wellspring is the man's own connection to truth, work, discipline, virtue, and the permanent. It was always there. It was buried under the structure of the old life, the marriage, the home, the role, the routine. When that structure collapsed, the wellspring was exposed and the man had to learn to draw from it directly. Stage 9, bricking the well, the slow masonry of routine. Virtue, work, sleep, prayer, walking, and brotherhood. Finding the well is not enough. You must build around it. Bricking the well is the long, unglamorous daily work of reconstruction. Each brick is small: the morning walk, the sober evening, the prayer or meditation, the document review, the phone call to your brother, the meal cooked, the page written, the workout completed, the court order obeyed, the boundary held. No single brick matters. The accumulation of bricks over weeks, months, years builds the structure that holds the new life. This is not dramatic, it is masonry. It is the most masculine act there is, building something solid one day at a time, without applause, without certainty about the outcome, simply because the alternative is to live in the rubble. Stage 10. Lowering the jug with rope and wheel. The patient mechanism of repeated practice that draws meaning back from depth. The well is bricked. The water is there. but water does not jump out of the well. You must lower the jug. You must use the rope and the wheel, the mechanisms, the disciplines, the repeated acts of drawing. Prayer is a jug. Work is a jug. Brotherhood is a jug. Fatherhood, even at a distance, even through a screen, even through letters and scheduled calls, is a jug. Exercise is a jug. Study is a jug. Each one must be lowered deliberately, repeatedly, patiently, into the wellspring of meaning that the passage has opened. Men fail here because they expect meaning to arrive like a lightning bolt. It does not. Meaning arrives like water drawn from a well through mechanism, repetition, and patience. Stage 11. Returning as servant king. The post-traumatic return as father, brother, witness, builder, and disciplined man. The final stage, the man returns not to the old life which is gone, but to life itself. He returns as a servant king, a man whose authority is earned through service, whose power is disciplined by truth, whose strength is tempered by the memory of his own brokenness. He fathers, he builds. He mentors younger men entering the same passage. He testifies truthfully, lawfully, with evidence and restraint to what happened and what it means. He works. He loves carefully, wisely, with full knowledge of what love costs and what it is worth. He stands as a witness, not a victim, not a hero, but a man who entered the fire and emerged with his soul intact and his hands ready for work. The shadow and the anima, withdrawing projection. The man entering this passage carries two psychological burdens he probably cannot name. Both must be confronted. The shadow, what you will not see in yourself. Every man has a shadow, the aspects of himself he represses, denies, or projects onto others. Under acute stress, the shadow surges. Rage, vengeance, fantasies, despair, cruelty, cowardice, self-pity, contempt, all the qualities the man refuses to acknowledge in himself under normal conditions now roar to the surface. The undisciplined response is to obey the shadow, to become the rage, to act out the vengeance, to collapse into the self-pity, to embody the contempt. The equally undisciplined response is to deny the shadow, to insist you feel only noble sorrow and righteous anger, to refuse examination, to project everything dark onto the adversary and everything pure onto yourself. Shadow integration means I see the monster. It is real. It is mine. I do not let it drive, but I do not pretend it is not in the car. You feel rage. Good. Name it. It is proportional. Hold it. Use it as fuel for disciplined action. You feel the pull of revenge. Name it. It is human. Do not act on it. Convert it. The desire to strike back becomes the desire to build something the adversary cannot touch. You feel self-pity. Name it. It is the seductive pull of the victim identity. Refuse it. You are not a victim. You are a combatant in a system that targeted you. Combatants do not have the luxury of self-pity. You feel contempt. Name it. It is the cheapest form of superiority. Replace it with discernment, the capacity to see clearly what is without reducing persons to patterns, the anima, the projection that must end. This is the deeper wound and the harder one to face. Every man carries an inner image of the feminine, the anima, in Jungian terms. This image is built from childhood, from culture, from longing, from the deep human need for the other half. It is the projection of completion, the sense that somewhere out there is the woman who will see you, understand you, heal you, complete you. Make the struggle worthwhile. Marriage is where this projection becomes structural. The wife becomes the carrier of the anima. She is not merely a person. She is the incarnation of the longing. Her approval confirms your existence. Her disapproval annihilates it. Her love is the proof that you are real. Her withdrawal is the proof that you are nothing. This is why divorce shock feels like death. It is not merely the loss of a person, it is the collapse of a projection that organized your entire psyche. The anima image shatters, and the man feels as though his own soul has been amputated. The discipline of anima withdrawal. Stop projecting salvation onto a woman. No woman will save you. No woman is the source of your life. No woman carries the meaning of your existence. This is not misogyny, it is theology. The soul's source is transcendent, not human. A woman can be a companion, a partner, a joy, a test, a blessing. She cannot be your savior. Making her your savior is idolatry. And idolatry always ends in the destruction of the idol and the despair of the worshiper. recover the image. The anima is real. It is a genuine aspect of the psyche, a bridge to the deeper self, a capacity for feeling, beauty, relationship, and interiority. But it must be withdrawn from projection onto an external person and integrated into the self. You stop looking for the woman who will make you whole. You begin the lifelong task of wholeness, which includes the capacity for relationship, but is not dependent on it. Test reality. The man who has integrated his anima sees women as they are, neither idealized saviors nor demonized destroyers. Human beings with patterns, incentives, virtues, and vices, operating within systems that shape behavior. He sees his ex-wife not as the betrayal of his soul, but as a human being who made choices within a system that rewarded those choices. He holds her accountable for those choices without reducing her to them. He learns the patterns, hypergamy, male disposability, gynocentric bias, the incentive structures of family law, not as weapons of hatred, but as tools of discernment, redirect love. The love you poured into the projection, the love that now feels like it has nowhere to go, redirect it toward God or the permanent or truth, however your tradition names it, toward your children who need a father, not a ghost, toward your work, which is your craft and your contribution, toward your brothers who are walking the same road, toward your own body which needs care, toward the restoration of institutions that have failed men like you. This is not withdrawal from life. It is the first honest entry into it. VSE, the well, Yi Jing, and biblical wisdom on rebuilding the source. Both the Yi Jing and the biblical wisdom tradition use the same image for the deepest kind of life reconstruction, the well. In the Gospel of John, Christ meets a woman at a well and tells her that those who drink from earthly water will thirst again. But those who drink from the water he offers will never thirst. It becomes a spring of water, welling up to eternal life. The image is precise. The deepest human thirst cannot be satisfied by external provision. It can only be satisfied by an interior spring that does not depend on circumstances. The man in spiritual divorce has lost his external well. The marriage was his well, the home was his well. The role, husband, provider, resident father, was his well. All of them are gone or fundamentally altered. He is thirsty, he is dying of thirst. And the temptation is to find a new external source, a new woman, a new identity, a new validation, a new addiction to fill the void. The well must be rebuilt interiorly. This is the meaning of the well imagery. The source of life is not out there. It is in here, in the connection to truth, in the discipline of daily practice, in the relationship with God or the permanent, in the slow accumulation of meaning through work, virtue, fatherhood, and brotherhood. Bricking the well is the daily discipline. Each act of self-command is a brick. Each act of patience with the legal process is a brick. Each sober evening is a brick. Each morning prayer is a brick. Each phone call to your children is a brick. Each workout is a brick. Each honest conversation with a brother is a brick. Each page of the timeline is a brick. Lowering the jug is the repeated drawing of meaning through practice. You do not feel meaning and then act. You act, pray, work, walk, father, build, and meaning accumulates in the act itself. The water comes up because the jug went down. 7. Natural law crimes and the satanic inversion. There is a moral architecture to what happens in the family court system. It is not random cruelty. It follows a pattern so consistent that it can be mapped, measured, and named. The classical and natural law tradition distinguishes between actions that violate the moral order inherent in reality and actions that merely violate positive law. Positive law is whatever the legislature or court has enacted. Natural law is the moral structure built into human nature and the nature of things, the requirements of justice, truth, and the common good that exist prior to and above any statute. When the positive law aligns with natural law, the system is just. When positive law contradicts natural law, the system becomes what the tradition calls a satanic inversion, the reversal of the moral order, the substitution of lies for truth, bondage for freedom, process for justice, and the punishment of the innocent for the protection of the guilty. The satanic inversion is not a theological claim about a literal devil. It is a moral and phenomenological claim about systems that invert the natural order so thoroughly that good is called evil and evil is called good. Here is the inversion magnitude scale, a moral measuring system for what happens in the betrayal sequence, false allegation as anti-truth, inversion type, truth converted into leverage, magnitude 9/10. The natural law requires that truth be spoken, that accusations be verified, that the accused face the accuser, and that truth be the foundation of justice. The inversion occurs when accusation itself becomes evidence, when the unverified claim made in the right institutional language triggers protective action that punishes the accused before any finding of fact. This is the inversion. The claim becomes the verdict. The man is treated as guilty because he was accused, and the accusation is treated as credible because it was made circular reasoning, Kafka trap. The very system designed to test truth becomes the instrument of its suppression. The restoration is evidence, chronology, witness testimony, cross-examination, and due process. The right to confront the accuser. The presumption of innocence, the requirement that claims be specific, verifiable, and subject to contradiction. These are not technicalities. They are the architecture of civilization, legal kidnapping as anti-fatherhood. Inversion type, family converted into casework. Magnitude 10/10. The natural law regards the bond between father and child as fundamental, prior to the state, prior to the court, prior to any institutional framework. The father is not a visitor. The father is not a paycheck. The father is not a risk factor to be managed. The father is the irreplaceable male parent whose presence shapes the child's development, identity, and future capacity for relationship, work, and citizenship. The inversion occurs when the institutional system converts fatherhood into a case file, a set of supervised visits, support obligations, behavioral conditions, and risk assessments that reduce the father from parent to petitioner. He must petition for access to his own children. He must prove his fitness. He must accept conditions that no mother would accept. He must pay for the privilege of being a father. This is the highest magnitude inversion because it attacks the foundational unit of civilization, the intergenerational bond between father and child. When this bond is severed by state action on the basis of unproven claims, the state has committed an act that natural law recognizes as a form of violence, not physical violence, but ontological violence against the structure of the human family. The restoration is lawful fatherhood exercised through patience, documentation, competent counsel, and the long-term refusal to accept the reduction from parent to visitor, equal parenting presumption as the legal default. The recognition that children need their fathers as a matter of natural right, not institutional dispensation. Process punishment as anti-justice. Inversion type. Law converted into coercive therapy. Magnitude 8/10. The natural law requires that legal process serve justice, that it be proportional, timely, evidence-based, and aimed at truth and the common good. The inversion occurs when process itself becomes the punishment, when the delays, the costs, the filings, the evaluations, the mandatory classes, the court appearances, and the legal fees become a grinding machine that exhausts a man into capitulation, regardless of the merits of his case. The system does not need to prove you are a bad father. It needs only to make the defense of your fatherhood so expensive, so slow, and so punishing that you give up. Process is the punishment. The injustice is not in the verdict. There may never be a verdict. The injustice is in the process itself, which extracts years of life, thousands of dollars, and incalculable psychological damage as the price of defending rights that should never have needed defending. The restoration is proportion, appeal, written discipline, and the strategic minimization of exposure. Do not fight every battle, do not litigate every issue, conserve resources, pick the fights that matter, build the record, and work through advocacy, testimony, and institutional reform toward a legal system where process serves justice rather than substituting for it. Additional inversions. Asset seizure as anti-stewardship. Magnitude 7. The natural law recognizes a man's right to the fruit of his labor. The inversion occurs when the system redistributes assets accumulated through years of male labor on the basis of standards that would never be applied symmetrically. A man's work becomes a liability. The harder he worked, the more there is to take reputation destruction as anti-truth, magnitude 8. The natural law recognizes the right to one's good name. The inversion occurs when the system permits, even encourages, the public circulation of unproven allegations that permanently damage the man's reputation, employability, and social standing, while providing no remedy for the damage done by false or exaggerated claims. Compelled speech as anti-conscience, magnitude 7. The natural law recognizes the right to think and speak freely, constrained only by the duty not to defame or deceive. The inversion occurs when the system compels the man to confess, apologize, undergo therapeutic programs, or affirm narratives he does not believe under threat of reduced access to his children or other penalties. 8. Archetype transmutation, what the fire forges. The passage transforms the man, but only if he cooperates with the transformation rather than resisting it or being consumed by it. The traditional language for this transformation is archetypal. The patterns of masculine development that appear across cultures, religions, and centuries. The man entering the passage is a set of archetypes in crisis. The passage either corrupts them or transmutes them. The choice, and it is a choice made daily through discipline, is his. Sulking, clean anger. Sulking is collapsed anger, resentment turned inward, expressed as withdrawal, passive aggression, contempt, and learned helplessness. The sulking man is furious, but expresses it through silence, sabotage, and the slow poisoning of his own soul. He is the man who refuses to engage, refuses to fight, refuses to build, and sits in the ashes, nursing his wound like a pet. Transmutation, clean anger. Clean anger is thumos purified by logos, the apex between sulking and wrath. It is anger with a clean object, actual injustice, clean evidence, documented facts, clean limits, lawful boundaries, clean speech, truth, precisely stated, and a clean end restoration of justice and construction of a better life. Clean anger does not brood. It acts lawfully, strategically, proportionately. It does not rage text. It documents. It does not drink. It works. It does not plot revenge. It builds the case and builds the life simultaneously, because it knows that the best answer to injustice is not destruction, but construction. The clean anger of a father fighting lawfully for his children is a holy thing. The clean anger of a man refusing to accept the narrative that he is disposable is a civilizational force. Do not let your anger curdle into sulking. Do not let it explode into wrath. Forge it into the blade it was meant to be. Wrath, disciplined justice. Wrath is anger unmoored from logos, the explosion that destroys the man and everything around him. Wrath sends the rage text. Wrath shows up at the house. Wrath posts on social media. Wrath drinks and calls at 2 a.m. Wrath is what the system is designed to provoke, because wrath provides the evidence the system needs to confirm its narrative. Transmutation, disciplined justice. Justice is anger trained, bounded, and directed toward restoration. It does not seek suffering for the adversary. It seeks the restoration of truth, the protection of children, the preservation of rights, and the construction of institutions that prevent what happened from happening to the next man. Disciplined justice says, I will tell the truth, I will build the record, I will use every lawful avenue to protect my fatherhood. I will not become the monster they say I am. I will become the man they fear, sober, disciplined, truthful, organized, and unstoppable within the bounds of law. Despair, sober fortitude. Despair is the black hole of the passage, the conviction that nothing matters, that the future is closed, that the children are lost, that the system is unchangeable, that life is over. Despair is the adversary's most powerful ally, because it does her work for free. The despairing man needs no opponent. He destroys himself. Transmutation, sober fortitude. Fortitude is the cardinal virtue that holds the line when everything says collapse. It is not hopefulness. Fortitude does not require optimism. It requires only the decision to stand. I will not fall today. I will eat. I will sleep. I will work. I will pray. I will call my brother. I will maintain the timeline. I will obey lawful orders. I will protect my children through every lawful means available. Tomorrow I will do it again. Sober fortitude is the brick-by-brick architecture of survival. It is not heroic. It is masonry, fantasy, anima projection, reality-tested compassion. The fantasy anima projection is the conviction that the woman, this woman, any woman, is the source of life, meaning, and salvation. It is the worship of the image rather than communion with the reality. It is the thing that makes the betrayal feel like death rather than injustice. Transmutation, reality-tested compassion. The man withdraws the projection. He sees women as human beings, complex, patterned, capable of love and cruelty, operating within systems that shape behavior. He develops compassion, real compassion, not sentimentality, which means seeing clearly and loving wisely. He does not hate, he discerns. He does not worship. He partners if and when partnership is warranted on terms tested by reality. Revenge impulse, lawful strategy. The revenge impulse is the desire to make the adversary suffer as you have suffered. It is the most dangerous impulse in the passage because it feels like justice and produces catastrophe. Transmutation, lawful strategy. The desire to strike back is converted into the determination to build forward. Strategy replaces impulse. The man plays the long game. He builds the record. He preserves the evidence. He maintains the discipline. He engages competent counsel. He obeys the law. And he positions himself for the best achievable outcome over years rather than days. Lawful strategy is the supreme expression of masculine intelligence applied to injustice. It is chess, not boxing. It is the construction of a position so strong through evidence, discipline, and patience that the adversary's narrative collapses under the weight of its own contradictions. Victim collapse, witness bearing. Victim collapse is the surrender of agency to the category of victim. It is the adoption of the identity I was done to as the total definition of the self. It is the left's most successful trap for men. You are a victim, and victims have no agency, and the only response to victimization is grievance, transmutation, witness bearing. A witness is not a victim. A witness is a man who has seen the truth, who tells the truth, and whose telling serves the common good. The witness says, "This happened. It was wrong. Here is the evidence. Here is the pattern. Here is what must change." The witness bears testimony, not as therapy, not as grievance, but as service. His testimony becomes part of the record, the archive, the case for reform. He is not a plaintiff in a personal lawsuit. He is a witness in a civilizational proceeding. Chaotic lover, ordered lover. The chaotic lover is driven by the anima projection, pursuing, pleasing, accommodating, tolerating, and sacrificing without boundary or discernment. He loves to fill the void. He loves to be validated. He loves to avoid conflict. His love is real but disordered, strong on feeling, weak on truth. Transmutation, ordered lover. The ordered lover has been through the fire. He knows what love costs and what it is worth. He loves with discernment. I give myself to what is true, good, and beautiful. I do not give myself to what is false, manipulative, or destructive. My love is disciplined, bounded, and freely chosen, not compulsive, not projected, not extracted. The ordered lover is capable of deeper love than the chaotic lover ever was because his love is tested. It has survived the loss of its projection and returned as something more honest. Love chosen in full knowledge of reality. Tyrant shadow, servant king. The tyrant shadow is the impulse to control, the rage that says, "I will make her pay. I will make the court see. I will make the system acknowledge what it did." It is the desire for domination born of powerlessness. Transmutation, servant king. The servant king is the archetype of masculine authority exercised through service. He does not dominate, he leads. His authority is earned through discipline, through sacrifice, through competence, through the willingness to serve the people he leads. He serves his children by being worthy of their respect. He serves his brothers by being present and accountable. He serves the truth by testifying honestly. He serves the future by building institutions that will outlast him. The servant king is the only legitimate masculine authority, and it is the exact opposite of what the system fears. The system fears the servant king because he cannot be controlled, cannot be bought, cannot be shamed, and cannot be stopped. Isolated orphan brotherhood member. The isolated orphan is the man alone, convinced his suffering is unique, convinced no one understands, convinced brotherhood is either impossible or unnecessary. Isolation is the adversary's secondary weapon after the legal system itself. The isolated man is easier to break. Transmutation, brotherhood member. Brotherhood is not optional. It is survival infrastructure. The man finds his brothers, other men who have walked the passage, who understand the territory, who will hold him accountable, listen without judgment, and refuse to let him drown. Brotherhood is not a support group. It is a war council, a guild, a monastic order, a band of survivors building the next thing. It is the oldest masculine institution, older than the state, older than the corporation, older than the church. Men gathered around fire, work, and truth. This is the form that must be rebuilt. Broken provider, statesman, builder. The broken provider is the man who defined himself entirely through provision, and whose provision has been weaponized against him. The assets he accumulated are divided. The income he earned is redirected. The work he did is reframed as non-monetary contribution by the adversary, who now claims half the value while denying the agency that produced it. Transmutation, statesman builder. The statesman builder recognizes that provision was never merely financial. It was architectural, the construction of a life, a family, a future. The old structure is gone, the new structure must be built. The statesman builder does not merely rebuild his own life. He builds for others, his children, his brothers, his community, the men who will come after him. He creates institutions, businesses, organizations, archives, networks, legal reforms, cultural movements. He is not a victim rebuilding a hut. He is a statesman rebuilding a civilization, cynic witness. The cynic is the man who has seen the truth and decided that it is useless, that the system is irredeemable, that women are inherently destructive, that marriage is a trap, that hope is naive, and that the only rational response is bitter withdrawal. Cynicism feels like wisdom. It is not. Cynicism is despair with better rhetoric. Transmutation, witness. The witness has seen the truth and decided that it demands testimony, service, and construction. He does not pretend things are better than they are. He does not pretend the system is fair. He sees clearly, more clearly than the cynic, because the cynic sees only the darkness, while the witness sees both the darkness and the light that refuses to be extinguished. The witness says, I have seen the machinery. I have been inside it. I survived. I will tell the truth about what I saw. I will build something better, and I will do it with the men standing beside me. Why some men do not survive and why you must. We must speak plainly. The passage we are describing kills men, not metaphorically. The suicide statistics for divorced men, particularly fathers who have lost access to their children through family court, are catastrophic. Men die. They die by their own hands in the black hours of the Negredo, when the compression of loss is total and the pathway forward is invisible. They die slowly through addiction, neglect, despair, the diseases of chronic cortisol, and abandoned self-care. They die socially, disappearing into isolation, dropping out of their children's lives, becoming ghosts in the machinery they once powered. This is not a footnote. This is the central moral fact of the family court regime. It produces casualties. It grinds men into powder and calls the powder accountability. It manufactures despair and calls the despair evidence. It creates the conditions for male self-destruction and then points to the self-destruction as proof that its original judgment was correct. Each man who dies in this passage is a universe extinguished. He is a father permanently removed from his children, not by his choice, but by a system that stripped him of the conditions necessary for survival and then blamed him for falling. He is a man whose skills, discipline, love, and potential were treated as extractable resources, extracted to the point of depletion, and then discarded as defective when the depletion produced collapse. You must become one of the men who lives, not because survival is easy, not because the pain is small, not because the future is guaranteed to be better. You must live because your children need a father, not a visitor, not a memory. not a cautionary tale. A father alive, present to the extent legally possible, building, working, maintaining the bond that no court order can sever, because it exists in the order of being prior to and above any institutional power. Your children need to know that their father survived, that he did not abandon them, that he did not collapse, that he stood and waited and worked and loved and built and was there on the other side of the fire when the time came. Your brothers need a witness. Men are entering this passage every day, thousands, millions in every jurisdiction that has adopted the family law regime. They are where you are now, in the first hour, in the shock, in the darkness. They need men who have walked the road. They need the map. They need the witness who says, I was where you are. I survived. Here is how. Here is what I learned. Here is the path. The civilization needs a builder. The institutions that produce this passage are not permanent. They were built by human beings operating within specific historical, ideological, and institutional incentives. They can be reformed, replaced, or superseded. But this requires men, living men, disciplined men. Men who have been through the fire and emerged with the clarity and motivation to build differently. The future can be freer and cleaner than the collapsed life. This is not a platitude. It is a claim tested by the experience of every man who has completed the passage. The old life, the marriage that was not what you thought it was, the home that was built on a foundation you did not inspect, the role that was defined by a system you did not understand, was not as good as you remember. It could not have produced the man you are becoming. Only the passage can do that. The new life, sober, disciplined, tested, brotherhood-supported, reality-anchored, truth-driven, is cleaner. It has less fantasy and more truth. It has less projection and more discernment. It has less dependency and more agency. It has less comfort and more meaning. The man who emerges from the passage is harder to deceive, harder to manipulate, harder to discourage. He is the man the system was designed to prevent from existing, because the system depends on men who do not know what it is, who trust it, who cooperate with it, who provide for it, and who collapse quietly when it turns on them. You will not collapse quietly. You will survive, learn, rebuild, and testify. X, the counter-revolution, what the passage prepares you for. The spiritual divorce is not merely personal recovery. It is preparation. The man who has walked this passage, who has survived the first hour, named the betrayal sequence, endured the job wound, moved through the alchemy, integrated the shadow, withdrawn the anima projection, bricked the well, transmuted the archetypes, and returned as servant king is not the same man who entered it. He is a weapon forged for a specific purpose, the restoration of truth, justice, fatherhood, and civilization. The archive. The first task of the counter-revolution is memory. The system depends on forgetting on each man entering the passage alone, without knowledge of the pattern, without the map, without the testimony of the men who walked it before him. The system thrives on isolation and amnesia. The archive breaks this. Men must document, preserve, and share their experiences lawfully, truthfully, with evidence and without exaggeration. The archive is the collective memory of what the system has done, the false allegations, the due process violations, the custody defaults, the financial extraction, the father erasure, the process punishment, the institutional bias. This archive is not a grievance list. It is evidence, moral, historical, and legal. It is the foundation of the case for reform. It is the record that future generations will study when they ask, how did a civilization that claimed to value justice, children, and family produce a system that systematically destroyed all three? Build it. Contribute to it. Preserve it. The Museum of Misandry. The system has produced an ideology, a set of assumptions, narratives, institutional incentives, and cultural scripts that frame men as inherently dangerous, women as inherently virtuous, fatherhood as conditional, male labor as extractable, and male suffering as either invisible or deserved. This ideology is not accidental. It is the product of decades of advocacy, institutional capture, and language manipulation. The Museum of Misandry is the rhetorical, moral, and historical catalog of this ideology. It is the place where the tropes are displayed, the assumptions are examined, the language is decoded, and the harm is documented. It is satire and scholarship together. the same combination that exposed every previous ideology that claimed moral authority while producing human wreckage. The museum is not a literal building yet. It is a posture, a practice, a way of seeing and naming what has been hidden behind the language of safety, best interests, and accountability. Every man who has walked the passage is a curator. You know the exhibits. You lived them, the testimony. The witness does not merely remember, he testifies. Truthfully, lawfully, with evidence and restraint, he tells the story, his own story, the collective story, the story the system does not want told. Testimony is not revenge, it is not grievance. It is the moral obligation of the survivor, the man who survives the passage and then remains silent out of shame, out of fear, out of the desire to move on, leaves the next man undefended. The next man walks into the same machine, unarmed and unwarned, because the survivors did not speak. Speak. Tell your story to other men. Tell it to your brothers. Tell it in the archives. Tell it to anyone who will listen with honest ears. Not to wallow, not to rage, to warn, to educate, to prepare, and to build the case. The due process restoration. The system will not reform itself. Institutions do not voluntarily relinquish power. The legal regime that produces this passage will change only when men organized, disciplined, truthful, and relentless build the political, legal, and cultural pressure necessary to restore the principles the regime has abandoned. Presumption of innocence. Accusation is not evidence. Claims must be tested by cross-examination, and the burden of proof must rest on the accuser. Equal parenting presumption. Children need their fathers. The default legal assumption must be equal, shared parenting, unless evidence proves that one parent is unfit. Proportionality. Process must be proportional to the issues at stake. The system cannot be allowed to use process itself as punishment. Evidentiary standards. Allegations must be specific, verifiable, and subject to contradiction. Vague claims of fear or pattern cannot substitute for evidence. Transparency. Family court proceedings currently shrouded in secrecy must be subject to public scrutiny because the secrecy protects the system, not the children. Symmetry. The same standards applied to fathers must be applied to mothers. The same behaviors categorized as abusive in men must be categorized as abusive in women. The same empathy extended to female suffering must be extended to male suffering. These are not radical demands. They are the requirements of justice as understood by every serious legal tradition in human history, including the tradition that built the civilization now being dismantled. The new institutions. The counter-revolution is not only critique, it is construction. The man who emerges from the passage does not merely fight the old system. He builds new institutions by men for men, grounded in logos and the Western canon. Brotherhoods. Formal and informal networks of men who support each other through the passage, hold each other accountable to discipline, and pool resources for legal defense, advocacy, and mutual aid. Legal advocacy organizations. Organizations dedicated to due process restoration, equal parenting, and the defense of fathers' rights, staffed by attorneys who understand the system from the inside. Archives and research institutes. Institutions that document the harm, collect the data, and produce the scholarship necessary to make the case for reform. Media and cultural production. Platforms that tell the truth about the family court regime, the male disposability crisis, the fatherhood emergency, and the cost of genocentric bias in every medium available, education and initiation. Programs that prepare young men for reality, that teach them the patterns, the legal risks, the institutional incentives, and the disciplines necessary to navigate a world that is not designed for their flourishing. Political action. Lawful, organized, disciplined political advocacy for legal reform at the legislative, judicial, and cultural levels. The framing. Present the critique and the counter-revolution as exactly what they are: moral, rhetorical, archival, historical, and symbolic. Not a call for violence, not a call for vigilantism. A call for truth, memory, law, and construction. The Nuremberg frame is apt, not because anyone is proposing a literal tribunal, but because the principle is identical. A system that has committed systematic harm under color of law must be documented, judged by the standards it claimed to uphold, and replaced by institutions that honor those standards genuinely. The counter-revolution is the work of generations. It begins with a single man, you surviving the passage, refusing to collapse, refusing to curse reality, refusing to accept false guilt, and beginning the long, patient work of rebuilding. Ungus, the code of the passage. If nothing else remains from this essay, let this remain. Stay alive today. No permanent decisions in acute shock. Contact one trusted man. Brotherhood is not optional. Brotherhood is emergency infrastructure. Do not seek revenge. Convert the impulse into lawful strategy. The adversary wants you to rage. Do not give her the evidence. Give her the silence, the discipline, and the long game. Do not drink. Do not drug. Do not spiral into intoxication. The fog will kill you. Obey lawful orders while challenging them through competent counsel. Compliance is strategic, not submissive. Write the timeline, date, time, location, event, witnesses. Build the record. Walk, work, pray, sleep, eat. These are not platitudes. They are operations. Use vetted counsel. Do process-oriented, fatherhood literate, experienced in the specific arena. Avoid unnecessary court battles. Minimize exposure, paperwork, escalation, cost, and process abuse. Hold your children in your heart regardless of what the system does to your access. Fatherhood is ontological. No order can sever what exists in the order of being. Refuse the victim identity. You are a witness, not a victim, a builder, not a casualty, a servant king, not a ghost. Begin bricking the well. Today, one brick at a time, one walk, one prayer, one page, one call, one act of discipline, one moment of patience, one truth told. The passage is real, the fire is real, the darkness is real, so is the dawn, so is the wellspring, so is the brotherhood, so is the work, so is the man you are becoming, harder to deceive, harder to manipulate, harder to break, harder to use, and infinitely harder to replace. Stand up. The fire has work to do, and you are the metal. Rite of passage plan, the passage. A rite of rebuilding after the zeroing. Practical ordeal map for the man who survived the wreck phase. I stay alive today, days 171. Make no permanent decision in acute shock. Your nervous system is flooded. The prefrontal cortex is offline. This is biochemical fact, not weakness. You would not sign a contract while concussed. Do not sign your life away while concussed by betrayal. If you feel you cannot stay alive today, contact one trusted man immediately or emergency medical help. Physical safety first, always. 2. Contact one trusted man. Not a committee, not a subreddit thread. One man who has survived something and rebuilt. Tell him 3 sentences. I am in crisis. I am not safe in my own head right now. I need you to hold the line with me for 72 hours. A brother who says, brother, breathe, is worth more than 10,000 followers. 3. No intoxication, 0. Alcohol is a depressant that removes impulse control while amplifying despair. It converts pain into a paper trail. It hands your adversary every tool she needs. Pour it out, flush it. The wound must be processed sober or it will never be processed at all. 4. No revenge, no contact spiral, no rage texts. Every message you send in fury becomes Exhibit A. Every call you make at 2 a.m. becomes evidence. Clean anger is named, governed, proportionate, and fruitful. Sulking buries the sword. Wrath swings it blind. Hold the blade still. Your silence is not surrender. It is strategy under logos. 5. Obey all lawful court orders while challenging through proper counsel. Compliance is not consent. You can fight lawfully and relentlessly inside the system while obeying every order it issues. The man who obeys the process while documenting its injustice is the man who survives it. Face to the Aetius, days 1 to 14, overlapping. 6, write the timeline, tonight, tomorrow, every night for a week. Dates, times, witnesses, screenshots, emails, text messages. Chronology is your anchor. Memory under trauma fragments. A written timeline is the first masonry of the rebuilt well. Keep it factual. What happened? When? Who said what? What document exists? Interpretation comes later. Evidence first. 7. Secure, vetted, due process-oriented counsel. Not every attorney understands fatherhood as infrastructure. Find one who does. Prefer a man or woman with first-hand experience of family court abuse who survived and rebuilt. Ask, do you believe fathers are parents? Not visitors. Do you understand false allegations as litigation strategy? Will you protect my due process? If they profile you as a perpetrator on first meeting, leave. 8. Sleep. This is not optional. Sleep deprivation mimics psychosis. It manufactures catastrophizing, impulsivity, and despair. 7 hours minimum. If you cannot sleep, walk until your body demands rest. Turn off screens after 9 p.m. Sleep is not weakness. It is the floor of fortitude. 9. Eat 3 meals, protein at each. Do not negotiate with this. A starved body cannot process grief. A starved brain cannot strategize. Cook if you can. The ritual of fire, knife, and plate is a masculine rite that reorders the mind. 10. Walk. 1 hour daily outside. Walking is bilateral stimulation. It processes trauma neurologically. It is prayer in motion. It is the body's oldest medicine. Walk without headphones. Walk and name what you see. Walk and breathe. This is not exercise. This is survival praxis. Phase 3, Nigredo, the blackening, weeks 2 to 6. 1. 11. Name the wound without obeying it. Sit with a journal. Write, I was betrayed. I lost my home. I am accused. I am separated from my children. I am afraid. Naming is not wallowing. Naming is the first act of sovereignty over experience. The man who cannot name his wound is ruled by it. 12. Begin shadow work. Your rage points to your values, your despair points to your dependencies. Ask, what did I need from her that I should have provided for myself? What fantasy did I live inside? Where did I confuse approval with respect? Where did I abandon my own frame to keep peace? This is not self-blame. This is metallurgy. The dross burns so the gold can surface. 13. Withdraw the anima projection. You projected the archetype of the sacred feminine onto a finite, flawed human being. She could not carry it. No woman can. The longing you feel is not for her. It is for the lost part of yourself you externalized. Withdraw it. Reclaim it. The wellspring is not in her approval, her body, her tears, or her narrative. It is in the ruined well of the self, waiting to be bricked and drawn from again. 14. Pray. If you believe in God, pray like a man who has been stripped and still stands. Job did not curse reality. Job said, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. That is not passivity, that is metaphysical defiance. If you do not believe, sit in silence daily and ask, what is true? The question itself is prayer. 15. Lift. 3 times per week. Squat, press, pull. Heavy enough to demand presence. The iron does not lie. It does not gaslight. It does not file motions. It offers one truth. You either move it or you do not. In a world of procedural chaos, the barbell is logos encoded in steel. Facey voi albedo, the Widdening, weeks 6 to 12. 16. Establish the daily order. Rise at the same hour. Pray or sit in silence for 10 minutes. Walk, eat. Work, lift, write, read 1 page of something older than yourself. Scripture, Stoics, Aristotle, Marcus Aurelius. Sleep at the same hour. This is not routine. This is bricking the well. Each brick is a day kept in order. Disorder is the adversary's climate. Order is yours. 17. Return to work. Work is worship. Work is identity rebuilt from rubble. Work says, I produce more than I consume. I am not a liability. I am a contributor. If your old job is compromised, find new work. If your career is disrupted, convert experience to consulting, mentoring, specialist practice. A man with 20 years of judgment is not obsolete. He is mispriced. Correct the market. 18. Practice virtue daily, specifically these: fortitude, hold the line when no one is watching; temperance, refuse the drink, the rage text, the doom scroll; justice, document truth, do not accept false guilt; prudence, consult sober men before acting; charity, Forgive without surrendering truth. Bitterness is failed pattern recognition. Name one virtue each morning. Audit yourself each night. This is the oldest masculine technology. Deliberate practice of character under load. 19. Protect fatherhood lawfully and patiently. You are a father, not a visitor. Fatherhood is public infrastructure. Act accordingly. Document every interaction with your children. Attend every lawful access opportunity. Never speak ill of their mother in their presence. Never use them as messengers or leverage. Your fatherhood is proved by your conduct under fire, not by the court's timetable. Phase v citrinitas. The yellowing months 3 to 6, 20. Find brotherhood. Join or build a circle of men. 3 is enough. Men who have been through the fire and come out disciplined, not cynical. Meet weekly. Speak truth. No simping, no woman hatred, no victim identity. Hold each other to the daily order. Brotherhood is emergency service. It finds men before despair does. 21. Begin service. Take one action each week that serves someone other than yourself. Mentor a younger man. Volunteer at a food bank. Help a neighbor move. Write a letter to a son, even if he cannot read it yet. Service breaks the siege of self-pity. It reorients you from zeroed-out ghost to servant king. The man who serves while wounded is the man who heals. 22. Read the Western canon as rebuilding code. Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics for virtue architecture. Marcus Aurelius for frame under persecution. The Book of Job for innocent suffering. Schopenhauer for the will's discipline. The Old Testament wisdom literature for fatherhood and natural law. These are not academic exercises. They are the blueprints of the institutions you will rebuild. Phase 6, Rubido, the reddening, months 6 to 18, 23. Lower the jug with rope and wheel, the well is bricked. Now draw from it. Return to vocation, not as the man you were, but as the man the fire made. Create, write, build, teach, start the business, found the group, draft the manifesto, coach the boys' team, run for the school board, publish the essay. The wellspring returns when the mechanism of repeated practice draws from depth. 24. Love disciplined by truth. If and when you encounter a woman worthy of covenant, do not project the anima, see a human being. Require reciprocity, set boundaries without apology, offer strength without servitude. A chaotic lover becomes an ordered lover only when a man orders himself first. 25. Return as servant king. The ordeal is not over. It has been converted. You are now father, brother, witness, builder, and disciplined man. You carry the scar that proves you entered the fire and came out with your soul intact. You are harder to deceive and harder to corrupt. You have survived what many men do not. The daily rule condensed. Practice action prayer. Silence 10 minutes, morning walk 1 hour, outside work focused blocks. No excuses, food 3 meals. Protein each timeline update. If new facts emerge, lift 3 to 4 times weekly, read 1-page minimum. Wisdom literature or canon virtue audit, morning, name 1, evening, grade yourself. Sleep 7+ hours, same schedule, brotherhood weekly contact with 1 trusted man service, 1 weekly act for someone else. Remember, reality does not negotiate with comfort. The state that replaces the father owns the child. Male duty without male authority is servitude, but a man's first red pill duty is self-command. The goal is not to hate the maze. The goal is to stop living as livestock inside it and to build a new house with your own hands on ground your own feet have tested, with brothers your own loyalty has earned, for children your own patience will reach. You were zeroed out. Now you begin at 1, the well. After crossing the great water, he finds the ruined well of the self, bricks it with daily discipline, lowers the bucket by rope and wheel, and draws living water again. I stood at the bottom of that ruined well where every man arrives when the old life has burned to ash. When the house is gone, the children are procedural leverage, the name is drag-netted through accusation, and the future you imagined lies in cinders around your feet. I know the weight, I have carried the ledger, and I am telling you, as one who crossed the great water and lived, the well is not your grave. It is the place where fantasy dies so that truth can finally draw water. Here is your next step. And it is singular because a man in the dark night needs no 10-point plan. He needs one act of disciplined order he can perform before sundown. Write the timeline tonight sober. In clean sentences on paper, not screen. Every date, every document, every conversation, every text, every dollar, every accusation, every medical visit, every missed visitation, every court date recorded, dated, witnessed where possible. This is not paranoia. This is the masonry of the well. You are bricking the shaft from which you will lower the bucket, rope and wheel, and draw living water again. The timeline is your first brick. Lay it tonight. You do not lay it alone. Find one man, one brother who has walked the Negredo and come through to albedo, the whitening, the cleansing stage where sobriety, records, lawful discipline, prayer, and clean daily order become your cathedral. Brotherhood is not optional therapy. It is emergency infrastructure. Every civilization that survived understood that a man unmoored from other men drowns in his own undertow, while a man moored to brothers becomes a peer. You do not need 50 allies. You need one trustworthy man who will look at your timeline and say, I see it. I believe you. Now walk, eat, sleep, pray, and obey the order while we challenge it lawfully. That man is your first proof that the world has not ended. The institutions that zeroed you out, the family court that treated fatherhood as a billing relationship, the HR apparatus that flagged your directness as liability, the therapy culture that read your grief as threat, the media machine that rendered your suffering invisible, the bureaucratic fog that consumed your savings while demanding you prove need from depletion. Those institutions are real and their costs are real, and I have named every demon in them without flinching. But they are not the authors of your resurrection. You are. They can strip the house. They cannot strip the logos. They can ration access to your children. They cannot ration your fatherhood, which is an ontological fact they lack the authority to repeal. They can zero your account. They cannot zero your agency. This dark night, this job-like descent where every comfort was stripped to test whether your faith was only consolation or also truth, this can become the circumcision of the soul, not a slogan. Not a toxic positivity band-aid slapped over a wound to make onlookers comfortable. I mean the precise alchemical truth that a man who has walked through accusation, exile, procedural warfare, reputational freeze, administrative drowning, and the silence of a culture that calls his pain a privilege, and who has emerged sober, documented, governed, lawful, prayerful, lifting, walking, working, serving, and building, that man is formidable in a way no comfortable man can ever be. He has been tempered, he has been tested. He has found that life does not flow from approval, litigation, female validation, institutional mercy, or fantasy projection. It flows from the wellspring of disciplined daily order under truth. So I leave you here, brother, at the edge of the great water. The old country is behind you, burning correctly. The new country is not a utopia. It is a place where men build institutions by and for men grounded in logos, where votes are tied to contributions, where fathers are not visitors, where authority and responsibility travel together, where empathy is reciprocal, where law sees persons and not castes, and where brotherhood finds men before despair does. You are not zeroed. You are not a ghost. You are not a wallet with liability. You are a man at the well laying brick, and the water rises. Sponsored book, No Safe Space, Truths That Terrify Weak Men. You're holding a weapon. Not the kind that leaves bullet casings or bloodstains, but one that shreds lies. I wrote it for men who've been gaslit into apologizing for their own spine. If you've ever been called toxic for holding a door, fragile, for refusing to cry on demand, or oppressive for wanting a wife who doesn't treat motherhood like a prison sentence, this book is your eviction notice to weakness. I spent decades watching boys raised to be guilt-tripped eunuchs, saw my cousin lose his kids, career, and sanity. After a false Me Too claim, his ex celebrated with a promotion. Watched universities turn sons into debt slaves for degrees that teach them to hate their own DNA. Noticed how male ally is just code for human shield. I tried therapy, meditation, bending the knee. None of it works. What does? Truth. This isn't for the men who'd rather gargle soy lattes than admit biology isn't fluid. If you think toxic masculinity caused Rome's fall, not the estrogen-saturated bureaucrats. Close this book now. Go knit a pronoun quilt. For the rest, Sparta collapsed when women got property rights and men traded swords for sensitivity seminars. Sweden's marriage rates nosedived once laws made husbands walking ATMs for ex-wives. Harvard proved fatherlessness breeds criminals, yet we still call single motherhood brave. Disney sells girl power while birth rates crater. The math doesn't care about your feelings. You'll learn why suppressing testosterone, chemically or culturally, turns nations into nursing homes. How repressive tolerance guilts you into silence while they replace your people. Why every boss babe dystopia ends with childless cat ladies and men too broken to lead. The solution isn't rage, it's ruthless responsibility. Rebuild, refuse. Replace. Weakness is a luxury dying civilizations can't afford. Your ancestors didn't carve empires by embracing vulnerability. They wielded duty like a scalpel. This book's your boot camp. Read it, and you'll either walk away furious or free. But if furious scares you, remember, kittens die when men hesitate. No safe space. Truths that terrify weak men. Written by Conrad Riker. Buy now. Links in description.